Hi, welcome to the Blueprints of Building podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and on this show, we interview the movers and shakers in the world of property development and real estate. Now, this show is supported by something few developers have quietly been using to get their projects funded and sold faster. Now, that is without touching the traditional 3D models. It's early, it's clever, and it's changing how people see off-plan property. I'll leave it there, but if you're curious, message me on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer Online or check out the show notes below. So today I'm joined by Earle Brady. Now, he's the construction partner at Bexley Beaumont, who has worked on some of the UK's most complex and high-profile infrastructures and stadium projects. Now, I'm talking about Liverpool FC. It's the main stand, specializing in engineering, procurement, and construction across major sectors like energy, transport, and commercial buildings. Actually come and chat with me, buddy.
It's a pleasure, Glenn. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
really appreciate
it.
So
I think this one is rather interesting. I think construction law is often the hidden side of construction life cycle that many people don't get to see. So let me start it off by asking you this. If time travel became a reality and you had a chance to go back in time to when you first started your career, what advice would the person that you are now actually tell your younger self, Bill?
I think a few things really. Firstly, have belief in yourself. You're good at what you're doing. Perhaps not as great as you think you are, but you're getting there. and
yeah.
and everybody else experiences the same imposter syndrome that you do.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until quite recently, where people, the older you get, more open people are. But
yeah,
it is true. I'd say don't take no for an answer too many times in relation to your career progression as well, and be careful who you trust with your career. I certainly made that mistake at least once.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Bill.
No, it's made me the sort of person I am today, actually. So
Yeah.
it was positive. It was just frustrating at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Also,
carry on.
I was just going to say, no, one of the big things I think is don't underestimate the value of relationships in all things, including business.
Yes, 100% agree with that.
Yeah, because I was at a big firm for quite a long time, and then when I struck out by myself, those guys that I'd made, connections with, they thought I was fine at the big firm, and when I was starting off, that they sort of turned out in droves, and the work flooded in, and it was really good, and I really appreciated that from them. And you can't underline too much how important those relationships are, and it's a big help when you start your own business and just generally in your career.
Yeah. And we briefly talked about this before we jumped on. So when someone walks past a big construction site, they tend to see the cranes or does construction law actually sit in the life cycle of a major project, and what makes it so vitally important?
Well, it runs right through the project from the very first idea really to way after the opening party. And what makes it so important is it helps you, the developer and the whole team, manage the risk in what's a really complex and increasingly complex and often a very high value environment. Because I suppose what people in the street don't see is that those major projects involve so many parties. You've got the developers, the contractors, you've got multiple subcontractors, you've got multiple design consultants, project management consultants, quantity surveyors, funders are really important, insurers equally, and then you've got the end users, the tenants, and then alongside that you've got bondsmen and guarantors, and they've all got different interests. And the contracts that we put in place sort of set out the clear legal structures so that disagreements, when they escalate, don't escalate too far. And we're talking about delays, cost overruns, those are the results. And then, you know, sometimes you even get project failure when everybody just falls out, and somebody pulls the money or walks off site.
And I suppose you get that quite a lot, you know, with so many stakeholders involved. You know, you're bound to have disputes now and again, and these you know, these contracts just sort of align everything and align everyone. Now, Earle, you've worked on when I was reading it, I thought, man, you've worked on some really big projects. You know, you've got your stadium and infrastructure projects, you know, like your Liverpool, your Fulham, and your Aston Villa. So what are the biggest legal risks developers underestimate when working on these massive projects?
Well, on the big projects, that they've got a lot of the stuff sewn up. You know, they've got the planning permission. It might find a problem choosing the right contractor or the end user, but they don't have the trouble finding one full stop. It's just choosing them. And so those things on the bigger projects that the smaller projects can't take for granted, they're kind of there. So the real problems come from risks that look and feel manageable early on, but they just scale up brutally once the project gets up and running. And the first one, and it's the main one in all projects that hit it in one way or another, is the contract risks quietly shifts over time. You know, once you get into the ground, things crop up. So often the developers think they've locked down all the risk in the design and build contracts, but in reality, risk creeps back through. When you dig into it, the specifications aren't as clear as you thought they were. You end up having to or wanting to vary the works as you go along. You know, you wanted that bit of the stadium to be a hotel, and hotel isn't going to work in the market at the moment, so you want it to be a spa, and then the spa providers get involved, that sort of thing, and then because things are changing and it's not nailed down as well as you think it was, gaps between the contractors and the subcontractors and the consultants just sort of creep up on you. And when you're talking, you know, projects that are in, you know, multiple tens of millions of pounds, it takes a very small issue can cause a sort of multi-million-pound dispute. Those contracts that aren't coordinated are the ones that, when those interface gaps just open up, becomes a common trigger for litigation, really, or for big arguments at very least.
And then sort of going on the back of that, you know, on large scale projects, you've got delays, you've got disputes. They're almost inevitable at some point of the project. Now, in your opinion, what sort of within the project?
I think there's a few. But the first one that sort of follows on from what we're talking about just now is unclear scope at the outset. If the requirements are vague, or they continue to evolve rather, or are interpreted differently by the different stakeholders, you end up with reworking things, scope creep, and arguments what was actually included rather than what you thought was included. And another thing is, and you get this on every project, or you can do, unrealistic scheduling and budgeting. So often projects get approved based on optimism rather than evidence, and then once reality hits, you got weather, supply chain issues, design complexity, everything starts to slip, and then the blame follows. And I'd probably say that the next one is communication breakdowns. We talked about the multiple parties involved before, and when information isn't shared consistently or decisions aren't documented properly, misunderstandings escalate into disputes.
So it's trying to get on top of all of these and spotting them early. So if you spot them early, you can get to them early, you can deal with them earlier, and a better outcome for everybody. So construction developers versus your investors. Are you seeing a shift towards more collaborative legal frameworks?
Do you know? Yes, but more at the top end, because there's a number of collaborative alliance contracts out there and framework alliances, and the government and government clients are pushing it as a direction of travel of policy, which is great. But you've got the construction playbook and the major public programs, but that's really on the huge government projects funded by the taxpayers. You know, the ones that we read in the papers run massively over budget and programs sometimes. And the way that
HS2, let's not talk about that.
yeah, well, the way that those projects like start off and then stay collaborative is because the government department paid for by you and me and the guys listening carries more risk than any commercial entity and the funders could stomach. So yes, there is a push for it, but most, and it is where the really big projects are heading, and actually in many cases are, but even the parties to the most collaborative contract can revert to the adversarial behaviour if the margins are thin, the risk is sort of poorly allocated, teams are under-resourced, or people just don't buy into it. So the big ones, they're collaborative. The small and medium ones, as far as I can tell, in my crystal ball, will remain as they are for the foreseeable, really.
Yeah, and then sort of given how much risk comes from the misunderstandings or the misalignment early on, and sometimes that frayed relationship from the various stakeholders. Do you think like better visualization tools, like the immersive 3D modules, digital 3D twins, that sort of thing, could actually reduce disputes and align all those stakeholders by giving the parties like a clearer understanding of the project up front visually?
Well, I think they can, but what I'm seeing in construction is that those technological solutions aren't being adopted in construction as quick as they can as they are in other areas. I remember, I don't think you might recall, but back in the early noughties when I was sort of starting off, we all thought that you'd get to all the projects you're working on would get to BIM level 3, which was full integration on all our projects in a few years. But the reality is that many of the projects that I'm working on now, not the stadium stuff, but the smaller ones, but we're still talking 10, 15 million pounds up to, they still don't have BIM, and that's sort of 20 years after the last flurry to get to that, everything sort of digitally in the same place, etc. It's not. Yes, it can and it should, but it's not getting there just yet.
Yeah, and then with all the tech evolving, for example, modular builds that you're getting nowadays, AI, digital planning, how's the legal landscape adapting to keep up with this rapidly ever changing environment?
Well, I suppose I touched on BIM just now, didn't I? And on the modular builders, I've worked with a few over the years, and that they've all fallen by the wayside. And I might be doing somebody a disservice, but I'm not aware of and you might correct me, a UK modular build manufacturer operating at real scale. And I think the industry. Yeah.
There's a few in America, to be honest, that are really scaling up modular, but I haven't seen it to take off as much in the UK, to be brutally honest, Phil.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few have a good go, and it just the industry. I don't know whether our industry here is just more conservative than the States. I've done a little bit of work in America, but not very much. But
I don't see why, because
over here.
Yeah, I don't know why, because it makes so much sense. Building in a factory, taking it on site. I mean, I was speaking to a gentleman in the US, and he's got a really good idea on integrating modular with robotics and AI. And basically what he does is he builds it in his factory, takes it on site, gets the robot to build the house for you. He can do the construction in a matter of weeks rather than a matter of months. And then if you don't like the area, or if the area goes downhill and you want to move to a new area, instead of buying a new house, you take your home. You go, you get your the robot comes, disassembles the house, flat packs it all, takes it to where the new site is, and then puts it on the next site, on the new site, which I thought was a fantastic idea. And to be honest, I think more people should be doing it, but it just shows you that we are a little bit behind when it comes to, thinking outside the box.
Yeah, definitely.
Us Brits, to be honest.
Or different routes. I know that in the States they've been doing that, moving your house as opposed to moving house, so to speak, for quite a while. So there's no reason why you wouldn't get something built and then keep moving it with you. I guess maybe the regulation's a bit different as well.
Who knows? But it makes perfect sense, to be honest. Well, thanks. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show, chatting to us about your side of the construction industry. That's often very much hidden in the public eye. But what I think is one of the most important bits of the life cycle of construction. So appreciate you taking your time out. Want to also thank my listeners, viewers of YouTube as well. However, Earle, just before we end this insightful conversation, if listeners want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
They can drop me an email which is Earle Brady, which is EARLE BRADY @BexleyBeaumont.com. One of the good things about having an unusual first name, if you type in Earle Brady on Google, I pop up quite quickly, so you'll be able to find my details that way.
Oh, nice. Nice. And I'll pop them in the show notes below as well. A very quick reminder, no worries. This episode was supported by a PropTech visual platform that's changing how forward-thinking developers plan, pitch, and sell. It's not mainstream yet, but it soon will be. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you know exactly where to find me. You've been listening to the Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and today I was joined by Earle Brady. Again, thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening and watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.